Welcome to CCN Presents the Teledahn Connection, our first in a series of controversial and thought-provoking documentaries, now with the backing and complete support of the Jarndyce Family Fund. The Office of Circumlocution proudly brings you this work in its entirety, what there is of it from beginning to end. For a long while, Teledahn was shrouded in mystery. It was thought to be an mist age like others linked through the dunny caverns of southwestern New Mexico. But intrepid reporter and screenwriter Ruby O'Degee discovered there was more than fish in those waters when she arrived in Teledahn to research a Cavern Player's film in the fall of 2005. It was lying there, without remorse or regret, on the desk in front of her, and left messy by dunny restorationist Doug Sharper. That map that so intrigued her, those lands drawn under a sun that went round and round. Ruby could not help herself. She decided that Teledahn was not an age at all.
I was in a hurry. As the executive producer under fire at Cavern Communications Network and its flagship news program, The Cavern Today, I continued to be embroiled in controversy. Notes were flying here and there. There were pros and cons and posting posters. One day, the explorers who worked at The Cavern Today, otherwise known hereabouts and thereabouts as TCT, wanted me to lead. The next day, they wanted me to leave, AFK. What I did not know at the time affected all the things I came to know later. While I was willy-nilly trying to find volunteers from every corner of the spelunking world, and while I was producing, cutting, and editing cast, hot simmered. The unknowing about my circumstances or fate eventually led to my stepping down from the role of producer. Needless to say, it was quite the brouhaha, wonderful fodder for drama and story. The role of producer or fired producer or annoying heretic squandered a fair amount of my time. Other projects, like scouring the map that I found on Sharper's desk, were done in haste, left for another day.
There are not many explorers now or at the start who agree with Ruby's theories. Her detractors are sure that the stress she endured during the breakup of TCT and CCN clouded her judgments that are already biased with good old-fashioned Irish bullheadedness. The accepted history for the age was published by the goody two-shoed Guild of Greeters. Teledahn was created for the Lord of the Guild of Caterers in the dunny year 8890. It shortly passed to the Guild, who industrialized the place to harvest the mushroom spores to make a delicacy. Later, Manazamo bought the age and used it for slave trading. Slaves were transported to the age of Rebec, where games, much like Roman gladiators, were held for dunny sport. Sharper never reported the details of the slave trade to former DRC chief Richard A. Watson, and he supported Zandy's willingness to explore areas without DRC approval. Sharper spent most of his time working in Teledahn before being recalled to work on other areas of the city.
Ruby never trusted the DRC, Doug Sharper, or Dr. Watson. She knew he wanted to restore the cavern for the purpose of exploiting it, turning it into an amusement park for tourists who are most interested in riding down pellet chutes than digging up information about what happened to the original folks who settled in the cavern. Ruby approached me about an interview in the spring of 2006. I came into the cavern after being invited by an old friend and family member. Cavern explorers knew him by the name of Ewigger Longears. We were both employed by the Trans-Sumerian Tea Company. Uncle Ewigger worked there for years. He headed up the water diversion and silo division. He called his work tribe liquidation. Kind of a cutesy phrase, but the sort of work he got paid the big bucks to do. Uncle Wigger's cavern work was a bit less fun. He was investigating uses for the algae-affected tea. My work involves gene pools and life origins. I was looking into the biology of explorers being called to the cavern. Were they or weren't they related to the ancient peoples who inhabited the caves? That was my question, along with a few dozen others. I really didn't have the time for an interview, and I knew that Mrs. D'Warlia was all about FaceTime and fame. Nevertheless, I decided to go along with their scheme, whatever it was, during the first few weeks of my stay. Ruby could introduce me to her friends at the station. They were well known by explorers, the very specimens I was going to interview myself. Little did I know how silly these CNers were. It was obvious their consumption of Kirill-baked treats had rattled their brains.
After 2 years of fumbling with my premise that Teledahn was the only major food producer for the city of Aguera, I met a new and wealthy explorer, Mr. Longears. He'd introduced me to his nephew, Matt R. Dutton. First, I liked Matt well enough. Then I noticed how much of a not historian he was. He was a charlatan, pure and simple. But his mysterious past was enough to keep me interested in what he was up to for a good long while.
I've known Ruby for a long time. When I met her, she was producing the Cavern Today podcast at CCN. It didn't take long before I could tell she wasn't entirely happy. Something was nagging at her. At first, I thought it was her job. She was very busy at the offices. CCN supported the production of the TCT podcast, partly in Cavern and partly on the surface radio broadcast. Nearly 50 people were working in and out of that organization. There was tension. At her request, I joined the staff. As she taught me about media production, I found out that her real interest was to tell story. Others at the network were apparently confused about what telling story actually meant. Some were quite despairing towards her explanations. You see, it was Ruby's dream to produce a prairie home companion kind of show. It would deliver the news when there was news, and fill the void with story when news was just an illusion. She wholeheartedly believed then, and she still does, that news about fiction is fiction, unless you're writing something dry like the review of guild operations or a doctoral thesis or the like. While her contention about fiction begetting fiction might seem simple, it caused more problems than you can imagine. There were characters in a story who ceased believing they were characters in a story. And there were radio personalities who sought larger rewards than Ruby could imagine, or even knew about. One of the stories that she wanted to pursue during her Prairie Home Companion parody was about Teledahn. She took me to Teledahn. We covered every inch of the place several times. I never saw what she could see, but I could see she passionately wanted me to see it. As an historian, I write about fictional fact, and I rarely conjecture. Ruby, on the other hand, she likes to make things up.